What happens when you take the basic idea of Bioshock and plop it into alternate history 1955 Soviet Union? Well, I'm Ethan Level with Level Out Gaming, and this is Atomic Heart. I played the Xbox Game Pass PC version, and this game not only looks incredible and beautiful, but also runs so smooth. I rarely encountered a performance hiccup, and I played the entire game on max settings, but motion blur off because it's motion blur. But from the moment this game starts, its long and breathtaking intro through the world, you're just in awe of the beautiful art design and direction and fidelity of the world. Only in certain open world areas of the game did it feel a little lacking on the graphical beauty this game shows to offer in its more linear sections. However, that did not take away from the game's continued immersion via its wonderful aesthetic and uniquely crafted world. In my entire playtime, I encountered almost no bugs besides some janky driving, and I think I encountered one moment where I fell through a building into the world. I sadly did not get that on recording, but overall, for Mundfish's first game outing and as an Unreal Engine 4 PC port, the game runs fantastic and looks great. You can tell over the game's long development time they really put care into crafting this world as a place that looks and feels lived in, and in the most dire circumstances of this game's story, dreadful and robotic in nature as its antagonists. Speaking of the world feeling lived in, the intro of this game, although long, really gives you the freedom to explore this city before everything falls apart. Overhearing a couple on a date, or people reading newspapers, gossip, or even nice little robots helping people. The way the game starts feels like you are entering into this alien world as a visitor. It doesn't revolve around you, but simply moves and doesn't acknowledge you, which lends itself greatly to the feelings the game evokes throughout your playtime, and deepens the experience of this world around you.
Why is he not falling over?
This is the part of the game that I feel like it truly excels in. It has combat very reminiscent of the Bioshock games, which is very clear that's what they were going for. However, with the updated combat capabilities with modern development, it feels so smooth, and if/when a Bioshock 4 comes out, I hope they take a look at Atomic Heart for combat inspiration. I found the upgrades to be really deep and rewarding, and the game does not punish you for respecing. However, once I found a combo of abilities I liked, I sort of just stuck with it and upgraded them throughout my playthrough. Also, the game allowing you to unlock any ability right off the bat is really nice and never feels restricting, so you can truly get a feel for the abilities you like. However, on the weapon side of things, upgrades and weapons themselves are found through blueprints in the world and can sometimes be hard to find, so check every chest. And once you get to the open world sections, be sure to do the testing grounds of the map to get more upgrades, weapons, and supplies. The weapons all feel really great. However, I wouldn't have minded a little bit more weapons in the game, or making them a little easier to get, as missing the weapons early on can make it more difficult for your playthrough. All the abilities that I used were a ton of fun to figure out and chain, especially the mass telekinesis one, which allowed you to throw enemies into the air, and later, after upgrading, smash them back down into the ground. But while they are floating, you can unload your weapons into them, then smash them down, so it created a really fun combination. Also, the use of abilities and weapons are seamless, and then you can shoot with your right arm and use your abilities with the left. There's no switching between abilities and weapons. The weapons, although few, felt really good in combat, and the upgrades were really rewarding and actually had an impact from combat to combat, and by the end you truly feel like you have an upgraded and powerful arsenal. Now, moving on to enemies. This game has a wide variety of enemies that I always felt like it was throwing something new at me, or throwing something different from room to room. From normal mustache robots to giant Incredibles looking evil robots, there's always a challenge being thrown at you. Not to mention the non-robot enemies, the Sprouts, which are these sort of plant-like enemies and human zombie monsters that are really fun and refreshing to take on when you do, as they fight completely different than the robots. I found each combat engagement with a variety of enemies to be perfectly challenging and not too hard or too easy with the onslaught of enemies they would throw at me. And after the battle was said and done, running around looting your kills always felt so nice. Speaking of which, this game is the best looting mechanic I've ever seen in a first-person shooter. Being able to just use the force and loot everything you're surrounding without having to open up each door and rummage through it is such an inspired choice and keeps the gameplay flowing at a nice speed to never slow down and feel like, oh great, now I gotta manually loot everything here. It was so easy that it encouraged me to loot rooms and go searching for loot because I knew it wouldn't be tedious. Now back to the enemies and in particular the boss fights. I really enjoyed the boss fights in this game. I'm not going to spoil any of them here, but they take a lot of inspiration from bullet hell roguelike games, and then they bring this sort of frenetic movement to the bosses. And partner with the player's dodge mechanic, which is really nice, it just feels like a sort of a dance. That, coupled with the abilities, weapons, and Mick Gordon's intense score, creates such a fun and jaw-dropping experience the first time you encounter a boss. And sure, some of the bosses aren't as great as others, but overall I never disliked them and was always excited to experience a new one. The one place where I feel like this game suffers in the gameplay and in general is the sort of weird semi-open world areas that I sort of feel like this game didn't need. They tend to be littered with enemies and cameras, forcing you to adopt a more stealthy approach when the game's gameplay is not really built around it, but really thrives in a more Doom, straightforward rage against the machine way. Later on, I found myself just running through these sections to get to the next story bit, as they were kind of a headache to deal with. I think if this game took a more straightforward linear map design or just sort of open concept like the old Bioshock games, it would have suited not only the playstyle but also the story. But that aside, the gameplay is one fun experience I think is a reason alone to check out this game.
Take my hand, Comrade Major. I will escort you to the Vavilov complex.
What in the sweaty hell is going on here?
Unfortunately, I have no information on the subject. All the robots have been carrying out their normal operations until they suddenly became hostile. Oh,
What the hell are you doing, you lousy bot? Get your rusty metal asses out of here!
That was really...
This game has a very interesting story, but at times a very convoluted and confusing one. The biggest weakness of this game is its writing. Early on in playing, I wrote this in my notes. It's not that characters talk a lot, it's that when they do talk, they talk a lot. The writing in this game can be really heavy in exposition, and at times I found it would repeat itself. However, despite this weakness within the story and pacing issues, I found myself a couple hours in just sucked into the world and the feeling the game and characters around me created. And this game has a lot to say and a lot to delve into. I won't be going too deep into the story because there are a lot of twists and turns that I think are best experienced by the player, and we do non-spoiler reviews here. But the story starts out with you, Agent P3, arriving at Facility 3826, which is a sort of scientific utopia designed and created for advancing the Soviet Union and the world's use of robotics. And you are tasked with finding a person named Petrov who is sabotaging this thing called Collective 1, which sort of runs and controls the robots in the facility, which caused them to go a little haywire. And you feel this ticking time pressure as your goal must be accomplished before the launch of Collective 2.0, which is a huge neural thought connector that almost everyone in the world will connect to. The game has some deep lore within its writing, which I think, unlike the game that inspired it, Bioshock, which uses subtle audio logs and the environment to imply the world and the lore, this game takes a more exposition-heavy approach with your glove AI companion and you talking about the world a lot. At times it can feel a little heavy-handed, but this is where I feel like the game is reaching to bite off more than it can chew, with telling a very deep and ambitious story. However, despite its shortcomings, I did really enjoy the story that it had. It's no Bioshock breaking ground, but it has its moments and it draws you in on this character's journey as in a way the world around them and their beliefs crumble. It's a very lofty story with beats evoking thought about the dangers of ideological extremism, diving deep into identity and free will, manipulation of governments, and propaganda, and far more. But it feels as though it is trying to say too much, so it says too little. This story is good. It's not bad by any means, but I think if this game fails at anything, it's desperately trying to be the next Bioshock, and in doing so is flying far too close to the sun in ambition. Looking back at the gameplay elements of this game, I think shows what I'm talking about. The flip-flop between poorly designed open world areas and tightly crafted linear ones, the core gameplay isn't the issue, it's that they couldn't decide what sort of ride they wanted to take you on. Overall, I would say come into this game with an open heart and not expecting much in terms of story, but still to experience it. This game is really good for a first-time AAA game from Mundfish and could really benefit from a sequel where they can tighten up these issues and really come to a focus point within all aspects of their game to do something truly great. Let's go over accessibility options real fast. Motion blur can be turned off, which is a must for any game in my opinion. Subtitles can be turned off and on, however they cannot really be customized at all, which is a shame. You can also turn down camera shake to 0.2 for some reason and cannot just fully turn it off, so a little weird, but allowing you to adjust camera shake is cool and is a great feature I think all games should have. And honestly, as far as I can tell, that is it on the accessibility feature side of things, which is pretty lackluster, not even including a colorblind filter, and at this time of writing you cannot adjust FOV. However, I know they are in the process of updating the game and adding that. But when comparing this to our last review of Dead Space Remake, which had a good amount of options, this is sort of a miss for modern gaming. Atomic Heart is a deeply ambitious game, from its gameplay and world design to its story and execution. However, with that, it also has some big flaws within its story and in particular open world segments. But where it succeeds, it truly conquers with its engaging and addicting gunplay and combat abilities to its rewarding exploration and jaw-dropping bosses. It's a game that, despite its flaws, is worth looking into and giving it some attention because it feels so refreshing to see a game pull old game design philosophies from the depths of the industry back to the forefront in a high budget and just fun experience. And it's a unique and fresh IP in a market that's dominated by reskins and sequels. These ones need to be rewarded because if/when an Atomic Heart 2 happens, I will be there cheering them on to truly hone their craft and accomplish what they're clearly trying to accomplish here. Atomic Heart is a 3 out of 5 game. If I was just looking at the gameplay and world, it'd be higher, but due to the game's story and design flaws, it's not what the game could have been, nor should be. But it's a franchise I will be keeping my eyes on in the future. Let me know your thoughts on Atomic Heart below, or if you'll be picking it up. I should mention this game is free on Xbox Game Pass, so that's a great way to try it out. And as always, be sure to like and subscribe to level up your gaming experience, and I will see you in the next video.